I just wanted to welcome our guest, director Hlynur Palmason. The movie is tremendous. Congratulations on your opening weekend. It's really just the kind of movie that stays with you, and it's so happy to see people responding as such. Have you been getting a lot of feedback for this weekend? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really positive, and it's been a lot of fun. It's because it's pretty strange days these days. So, but it's nice to have see how well people are reacting to the film. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I asked or I checked with you earlier about this, but I find it you're seeing the house that the film is shot in right behind you. That's the same door, and you're living there now, right?
Yeah. We're living there, in the house.
Oh, that's tremendous. That's in is that in Hoffen, your hometown, or is that in the East Fjords of Iceland?
Well, yeah, Höfni is located in the east coast of Iceland, in a small town, the town I actually grew up. And we moved back here from Denmark to sort of prep the film and film it. And the plan was to sort of move into the house and change it, and then have a artist residency and work like that. Yeah.
Talk a little about that amazing time-lapse scene shot at the house, which was shot over 2 years with a 35mm camera. And it was kind of shot over the course of your development of the film. How did you visualize the scene and what it was going to specifically show over time?
Yeah, I always liked the idea of having, a sort of a studio life where you would you go to work, you would work on your film, and but I didn't like just sitting and writing. So I began trying to find a way to sort of develop and write it simultaneously or parallel. So I began writing and developing, going to locations very early, finding the people, the actors, in the beginning steps. And I found the house and knew that was sort of priority one, finding the location, the main location. So I began shooting it 2 years before, and while I was shooting it, the seasons, I didn't know how long I was going to be doing it, but I just wrote the script parallel. So actually, you see 2 years of the seasons changing from winter to spring, and then summer and autumn. But I didn't, and I was also trying to find out when the film took place. What season when the film starts, what season would fit the film's temper the best.
Now, the temper is conveyed really masterfully, and dare I say cinematically, through the cinematography of Maria von Hauswolf, but you also did a series of photos called A White Day Before This that kind of informed the look of the film. I wondered if you could talk a little about how you and von Hauswolf worked on the film. Did you storyboard a lot?
Yeah, I think I've been working with Maria ever since film school. So basically everything I've done with her. So she's, one of my closest collaborators. So we were kind of, I think what we try to do is we try to go to the material, we try to simplify everything. We really just try to be as effortless as possible, and try to find ways to simplify them. And yeah, it's a blend of sort of storyboarding, but more like going to locations early on and sort of walking through the scenes and sort of rewriting them, and then I go and rewrite them, and then we sort of, we try to find a very effortless way of moving throughout the film. And I think that's sort of what we do.
Oh, absolutely. It's that amazing opening scene with the clouds was just one that immediately jumped out at me. I wondered how figuring out and adjusting how you shot that work, because it's such a striking piece of and very controlled piece of camera movement.
With the car.
Oh, just okay.
No, I mean, you mean the car scene in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, that location came very, very early, because when I mean, it's the highest gravel road in Iceland. It's very high, and because of the height, it's often full of clouds, and that looks like fog. So it's like thick clouds, and it's a very strange place. It's both. I mean, it's extremely beautiful, but at the same time, it has this eerie presence that it was like almost something was hidden there or something, and it sort of always I really wanted to go there again and again and sort of find out what was going on there, and they just closed off the tunnel, the small tunnel in the film. They just closed it off because it was old and was a bit dangerous. Rocks were falling down, and they had made a new one that was further down towards the town. So we had 100% control over both the road and the tunnel. So it sort of made a lot of sense placing the film there.
It's remarkable because it really does inform and feel like a reflection of the character's turmoil. And I know you sort of set out to make a detective story that's sort of more about the characters' emotional lives than about solving a specific mystery. So I wonder if you could talk a little about how you wrote the role for the lead actor, Ingvar Sigurdsson, who's tremendous. He won the award at Cannes deservedly. How did casting him and writing for him in mind change the way you thought of your character?
Yeah, I mean, I made a short film at film school where he was the main actor, and we became friends, and we sort of felt like when we had been working together, it was a 30-minute film, and I sort of had this feeling of there was a lot of possibilities to explore together. There was a lot of things undone, so I felt like we should do something, and I had this project. This vague idea called A White Day, and I asked him. I remember when we were screening, I think, my short film. I asked him, do you want to be a part of A White Day? And he was on. So it was very. I mean, I really like having. I really like writing it for someone, especially the main characters. So with The White Day, I wrote it for him, and I wrote it for Ida, my daughter. So I really wanted to sort of put them together.
I meant to ask about Ida because I know, according to an interview I read with Mr. Sigurdsson, you do a lot of takes per scene. I wondered what's it like directing your daughter for something like that, for a project like this?
I mean, it was a lot of fun. And I'm surrounded by friends and family. So I mean, we have a very small, intimate set. I mean, I work with people that are my friends and close collaborators. So I feel like it's a small family. So inviting her to be part of that family was very easy for me. And I've also been working with her before. I mean, I've done smaller video works with her, and it sort of felt very. It felt like a natural, how do you say it? A natural step forward. But it was important for me to. I mean, the core. One of the core of the film was very much this relationship between Salka and Ingimundur, the granddaughter and grandfather. So that was sort of for me, the core of it, and sort of how to capture this, unconditional love you have for your grandchild, and so it was very important for me that I knew who I was writing it for.
That's interesting because I've also heard you say that there are two. It's sort of like the crux of the movie is a collision between two types of love. that
Yeah.
between a grandfather and granddaughter and a husband for a wife. So I wondered, especially in a scene like the one where your daughter in character is kind of pushed away by her grandfather. How does a scene like that reflect the collision of those two types of love?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's true, because it was this, unconditional love with, between grandfather and a granddaughter, that is very pure and simple, and it's just there. And then you have another kind of love that is towards, your lover,
Hmm.
which is much more complex, and where there's a very thin line, between loving the person and hating it, and jealousy and all kinds of other feelings. So I was sort of interested in having those two, and sort of maybe, putting them together, or sort of having them, yes, like this, and
Mm.
and I felt like that was interesting. I felt it was interesting. For example, if you think about the scene when he's watching a videotape, he's watching a video of his grandchild when she was 3 years old, singing
Hmm.
an old song, which is a very lovely moment in my view. And then 3 seconds, or yeah, 10 seconds later, he's watching a video from another tape of him making love with his wife.
Hmm.
And, it's a completely different kind of feeling, but I found it very interesting that they could work together in a way. And I just, that was something that I thought always was worth exploring, something that I wanted to explore further.
I see where we have our first audience question, and this one is from Hanu from Finland, who asks, "How did you choose the Leonard Cohen song, and was the idea to include it in the film clear to you from the start?"
Yeah, it didn't come completely in the start, but I remember it when I was shooting the opening scene, the seasons going by. I was listening to music. I parked the car and I walked with the camera towards a place where I had made this fundament with a tripod where I could slide the camera on, and it wouldn't move. It would stay there for 2 years, and yeah, and then I heard this song. I was listening to Leonard Cohen, and I heard this song, and it just connected with the moment, and I felt it was absolutely perfect for it. So it came in very early.
That scene is shot in that amazing long take, and that track into him. I heard Mr. Sigerson mention that it took him a while to know before you would call cut for that scene. Is that how was that? Did you do a couple takes for that scene, or did you know, like, did you get it in one with that one?
Well, with that one, I mean, with Ingvar, I tend to want to make more than one take, because it's just so much fun, and I mean, we're really playing around, and he's very unafraid. He's not afraid to try different things. So for me as a director, I mean, it's just so much fun. But I remember we did that. I mean, it is the last scene in the film, and I remember that it was also the last scene we filmed during the whole filming process. So it was. I think what I just tried to do was to. I mean, it almost happened. It was very important that the scene was there, because in the end, because we as a film crew, were coming to an end, and we were all very emotional, and so the sort of the buildup of the film was sort of building up in us. So it was just the perfect moment for the scene. So I think it was very easy for Ingvar to sort of to dive as deep as possible into the scene. And I remember the first take, the whole crew was crying, and it was very emotional. It was very, very strange.
We have another question from the audience. It says, "What is the kids show that plays on the TV in the film? Did you create it? And what is its meaning within the film?"
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I've had this question before. because people find it sometimes a bit odd. I mean, it is. It's in a way, but it's. I mean, yeah, we did make it ourselves. The main character in the kids show is actually a pretty well known or a very well known sort of child. What do you call it? Like kids show host. Can you call it that?
Yeah.
And he's yeah, very well known in Iceland, and I wanted him to I wanted to sort of make. I mean, I think sometimes when I think I can explain it best by saying that sometimes when you're working on something, it's sort of just sometimes you feel it grows very naturally, like a tree, you know, and sometimes a tree grows up and, you know, and then branches come to the side. And I think, you know, this scene is a typical branch that goes a little bit right. And I wasn't really sure where it was going, but I really enjoyed the ride. I really enjoyed what was happening, so I just kept writing it. But sometimes if you take a step back and you look at the whole tree, this branch is very important, but it's not always this very narrative thread. So it's the energy of it that I was interested in. It was the sort of the chaos that I was interested in, and sort of placing it there and making it work with the scene itself that is before. It just felt like the right energy, the right temper, the right movement. So it's always a bit intuitive, you know. It feels right. If it's right, you know, for us, it just feels right. Yeah.
We have another question, this one from Pavel in Bulgaria. Can you talk about editing the film? Did you change a lot while editing, or did you keep the film close to the script?
I think I would say that the film is very, very close to its script. I think, I mean, there are changes, but they are quite few. But I mean, I think we really tried to sort of get the rhythm right in the script, especially the last couple of months with the script. We really tried to. I sent the script to, you know, my editor and my cinematographer, etc., and I sort of I work a lot on. I try to put the script on the walls and like go through it and see if the rhythm is right. And but then, you know, after shooting, we sort of, me and my editor, we begin finding the rhythm in the editing, and it took, I think, half a year. I think it took 6 months editing. And Julius, my editor, he flew here from Denmark to work with me, and he stayed here for 6 months. So it was a very, very like, yeah, very enjoyable process, but it took a lot of time to find the right balance and rhythm. Yeah.
Let's see, we have a question, another from Hanu from Finland. There's a point in the film where you show all the characters looking head on at the camera. What was the idea behind those shots? Was it a Brechtian distancing effect?
No, I think it was, I think when I was in sort of trying to find, you know, trying to find my language or my way of filming when I was in film school, I remember I began filming every space that we were in, like every location. We just made almost like a portrait of the location. And then I took that a step forward, and I made like almost a portrait of each object, like you know, someone's shoes or an important object in the film. And then I began making portraits of the characters. So for me, it's just been, you know, part of just the exploration, you know, just exploring what you're interested in and looking at the things that you're interested in and trying to sort of not understand them, but try to see them, you know, and I think it's just part of the process for me. So now when I make a film, I always make portraits of everybody. I make portraits of the objects I'm interested in, and I think you always, when you're working on something, you have a lot of images in your head, and I try to film them, you know, and I just have them with me. I don't always know where they come from, or if I'm going to use them, or if they mean anything. But for me, they're just images that emerge, and therefore I think they are part of the whole picture or the film itself. Yeah.
We have a question. I believe we answered this one, but just in case, it says, how long was the opening sequence filmed? That was about 2 years, right?
Yeah, it was about 2 years, I think, and it wasn't planned out as. I mean, I had no idea how long we would film. We didn't even have the film financed. You know, we didn't know if we could even film the film.
Mm.
But I have very good producers, and we found a way to have a 35mm camera here, and some magazines, and some film rolls. So we just, you know, did it without knowing what would happen, and thank God for, you know, we got the finance together, and we could make it. Yeah.
I meant to ask, actually, I know the score is not originally composed for the film, but it was by it was something that you latched onto, and it really defines the movie. Could you talk a little about the finding the music for the film?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of Edmund Finnis ever since I heard him. I mean, I heard him a couple of years ago, his music, and I just I sent him an email and just told him that I love this music, and I was hoping that we would, you know, someday in the future maybe work together if he was interested. And we just sort of started sending each other's emails. I was sending him images and stuff that I was working on, and he was sending me music that he was working on, and I had this project that I just thought that he would fit very well. It's another project that I'm working on right now, called Godland, and but we knew that sort of. I always thought that, you know, we would work together on that, but then while doing A White Day, he sent me music that he had just recorded with the London Contemporary Orchestra. And I remember we were actually, I think we just started editing the film when I received it, and then we listened to it, and we were just looked at each other, and we were like, what? I mean, this is crazy, you know. And but I think his music already started affecting me 2 years before. You know, I was always listening to his music, and he was sending me. So I think it probably affected the way I made the film in a way. You know, if I think so, because I was so drawn to it. And so it was so strange when we sort of began working with the music. We really felt it fitted, you know, 100%. Yeah, it was very strange.
It's the film's title. I actually just thought of something. It is. I read that there's a funny Tarkovsky connection. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, there was another filmmaker, Ivar, who made like this behind the scenes with the film, and he was also the one who, what do you call it, who puts all the material in the computers, the filmed materials. I can't remember what you call the title in English, but so he was on set. He was a fellow filmmaker, and he was he asked me, where does the title come from? Is it connected to Tarkovsky? And I didn't know what he was talking about, and he told me that Tarkovsky's father wrote a poem that is called A Bright Day.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked if it came from there. And I mean, it's interesting because I think Tarkovsky was probably one of the directors that sort of I saw maybe when I was my early 20s, maybe. You know, it came very late for me that I saw his film, but I still remember seeing it, and it really affected me. I mean, it really made me think a little bit different about film and how personal they could be. You know, every detail, every movement, everything. And yeah, so it was yeah, it was a funny thing.
We have, speaking of filmmaking and influence, we have a question about what the filmmaking community in Iceland is like.
Oh, I mean, it's I'm actually really happy to be a part of, you know, you know, I think everybody wants to be, in a way, a part of something, you know, and I think there is a very nice filmmaking community here right now. I mean, it's a very new, it's almost like a child, you know, because I mean, the first Icelandic feature film that was made here, you know, that was Icelandic production was, I think it was made in 19 now I forgot, 1976, 8. I can't remember. Maybe this is wrong, but it's somewhere around that. So it came very late. So I mean, we haven't been making films for a long time, and so we're new. But there's a very, I mean, it's a very small but very tight group of filmmakers, and I think we all are sort of rooting for each other, and sort of supporting each other, reading each other's scripts and seeing each other's edit and sort of rooting for each other. So yeah, it's a good community.
I meant to ask, oh, I see there's an audience question. Let's see, were you always thinking of casting Ingvar in the main role, or was that decision made after writing? I believe that was always with him in mind, right?
Oh yeah. It was, I basically wrote it for him and my daughter. Yeah.
One question I had was there's a couple of close-ups on Ingvar that's reminded me a bit of Bergman, and I wonder if there were cinematic or even photographic big influences that you had in mind, sort of like the way that, you know, the Cohen song immediately evokes a mood, or it feels very, I guess, evocative, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of, I mean, I think you're always inspired by, you know, a lot of things, both filmmakers, artists, music, people, and everything. But I remember, I mean, with Bergman, I think, I mean, he's one of those, you know, European filmmakers that sort of, I mean, I've seen a lot of Bergman films, and you sort of go through that phase when you go to film school. You see a lot of Bergman, and I always loved his work, and I really, I think what I was, you know, mostly inspired by Bergman was, you know, his process. You know, how I was always so interested in how he worked. You know, he was living in this island, the Faroe Island, I think it was called, Ella Faro. And then he sort of had a house there, and he filmed during the summer and edited during winter, and then he wrote a play and made a play over winter, and then he made another film over the summer. And I love this sort of almost like, you know, Monet with his gardens or something, like it was almost made in the, you know, in his garden. And I really always, I think I was always very inspired by that. And I think that's one of the things I really got from Bergman, is just his, you know, I mean, he was so productive. It's completely insane if you look at it. You know, some of the years he made films, it was, you know, 2 films a year or 3. I can't even remember, but I mean, it's completely insane. And yeah, but I was always inspired by that, you know, his energy, and yeah, some of his films are great. Yeah.
Someone in the audience wants to know a little more about your next project. You mentioned the title earlier, but I didn't catch it. If you could tell us a little more about it.
Yeah, well, I began working on a project called Våladaland, which is, right now it has like 3 names. It has an Icelandic name, a Danish name, and an English name, and they all like mean different things. So it's very, I mean, it's a word that is very, I mean, it's hard to translate, or it's tricky. But right now the English title is Godland, and I began working on it in 2014. So I've been writing it ever since, and it's been it's a period piece. It happens in the 1870, and we follow a young ambitious priest sailing towards Iceland, and he's there to build a church. And but also photograph the people and the landscape. So he's sort of yeah, and in Iceland he meets a guide named Ragnar, who will guide him through the wilderness and to the place where he's supposed to build this church.
Mm.
And so it's about this this mission, this travel through Iceland.
We have a two-part question from the letter J, who asks who your favorite Scandinavian directors are and what your favorite Scandinavian movies are.
Oh shit. I remember having a really good experience seeing a film by Roy Andersson called Du Levende, and so when I saw that film, I immediately went and bought another Blu-ray with another film of his, and then I just watched all of his films. So Roy Andersson is one of them. I think he's a great artist. I'm always looking forward to see his films.
That movie, by the way, the English title is You the Living. That's a tremendous movie.
Yeah, You the Living. Yeah, it's great. Also, the film before. Do you remember what it's called?
A pigeon sat on a branch, or is that the one after?
That was the one after, right? It's called
Songs from the Second Floor, maybe?
Yeah. It's amazing.
And Jay also wants to let you know he loved Winter Brothers.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
And he's also excited to watch A White, White Day. I guess he wasn't able to catch it just now.
Yeah, great.
And it's funny, Anderson, actually, there are scenes, there's some shots of the shower in particular that made me think of Anderson, because it has that tableau kind of effect. It's remarkable.
And have you heard how he works? You know, his studio and everything.
Doesn't he build everything? He builds, like, he just spends years of his life building these sets, right?
Yeah, and his studio is actually, you know, he lives in his studio. He lives on the loft, and then underneath he has like the production. I think I'm telling the truth. He has like the production where they're like financing the film and working and everything, and on the bottom they have like a studio where they film the whole film, you know, or a couple of studios. So it's, I mean, that's like, you know, like we talked about Bergman earlier. I mean, I love, you know, the way they work. You know, I love this, you know, the personal approach. When I love when people are working like they work in studios. They find a way to sort of, because film is so much about, you know, the film media is very much about time, you know, and sometimes the more traditional way of making a film, sometimes it's almost lack of time, because you have to film it so quickly, you know. But I love when people find a way to sort of stretch time and have more time with filming it. And like Roy Andersson, he films it over, you know, he films a little bit this week and then a little bit tomorrow and then a little bit, you know, for 2 years or something. I just find that amazing, you know.
I'm being told we have to wrap it up, but for anybody who, like Jay, hasn't seen the film yet, you can catch it on Film's virtual cinema site. And anybody who's hoping to see it in an actual theater can watch it at home and also support their local art house by clicking on the film through virtual cinema and giving to their specific art house. So thank you again to Mr. Palmason for joining us. This was a treat, and thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you so much. Thanks.